Okay, so question of the day. Once again, go to menti.com. Code is 6957653, 6957653. So the question of the day is, will Bitcoin rally after the US elections? And we have three options. First option, pump it. Are you long Bitcoin post the US election? Next option, don't know, I'm in stable coins. And the third option, no way, I'm short Bitcoin. So Bill, what's your take? What do you think will happen to Bitcoin post the US election?
All right. Well, the short answer is I think it'll go higher. So let's talk about the election. So the blue line is, the betting odds on Biden, and the red line is the betting odds on Trump. This is what everyone is looking at. And as is classic in markets, if everyone is looking at the same thing, it's wrong. So I'm not looking at this. Okay. What I want to look at are two things I found this week. Okay. The top one up here, okay, is a quote from the Federal Reserve telling the Financial Times, look at the last sentence. They want to rethink financial stability in the US. So they want to print trillions of dollars without creating speculative fever. Now, on one hand, you might say good luck. On the other hand, it's a really interesting statement, okay? Especially when you start talking about things like financial stability. Now, I started to take this quote more seriously when I look down here on this block, and I'm reading the last quote from a firm called Chainalysis that helps look at what goes on blockchains. And the last sentence is a quote from the Attorney General saying that, crypto represents a transformative way to store value, but its risks, including national security threats, must be addressed. Now, the last time I heard Uncle Sam talk about anything related to finance being a national security issue was back in 2009, when the great financial crisis came out and the intelligence community down here entitled its threat assessment, like bad guys, the threat assessment was the global financial crisis at the top. After that, that's when the Federal Reserve started QE, which, equity traders now know and love. But back then we're like, what's QE? What's it going to do? So what am I trying to tell you? Well, if there's a national security threat in crypto, folks, guess what? It's not Bitcoin. It could be the stable coins, okay? Or it could be certain exchange behaviors. I don't know.
What do you mean
what
by
I
that?
do know is...
Apologies to hop in here, but when you say it could be stable coins and not Bitcoin, could you maybe kind of elaborate on that to our audience?
Sure. So I think the governments, like if there's a coin that represents the dollar, I think the government wants to have control over that coin. Mm-hmm. So if the government has like a national security beef, it would have a beef over the interest rates that the dollar coin or whatever coin represents. Okay. So here's a radical notion for a TV show that Bitcoin is safer than a stable coin. Yes, Bitcoin could go to 7,000 or zero, right? But corporate treasurers are now involved. And as Novogratz said, that's now a movement, okay? When more than one guy does it, it's a movement. It's a classic quote. So the question is, can Bitcoin go up? The answer is yes. Okay, why? Because Bitcoin may be a safer bet from a regulatory view than stablecoins. It's exactly the opposite of what you might think normally.
All right, very interesting take. Craig, what's your take? Do you think Bitcoin could go up post US election?
Yeah, I'm bullish. But I'm bullish long term. At the moment, I'm bullish medium term, and I'm also fairly bullish short term. So they all sort of align for me to be bullish. And I'm not doing this based on I want it to go higher, because I do, right? We all do.
Yeah.
I'm not basing
That's why we're here.
yeah. It's not based on just what I want to see happen. But it's based on the data. Like I've made good money shorting Bitcoin because it's just as volatile on the falls as it is on the way up. It's money to be made, and it's just kind of like, oh, okay, well, if it's going to fall, I may as well short it, but I want it to go up. But we can, build. I mean, we don't make money either direction as long as we're trading, leverage products or futures products or margin products. So, yeah, I think it can go high. I think it's interesting what you said, mate, about the stable coins, and I think it comes back just to add to it and to see your theory on it. It's sort of on that power play, right? Because if there's going to be, like, governments love control, that's what they like. They want to make sure that they know what we're doing, where we're doing it, and how we're doing it. And if they don't, then it's a national threat, right? So do you think that the stable coins could be not under threat, but a higher risk factor because they are like a derivative, or basically they're stabilized dollars, really, but just not the dollar. They're not owned by the government. So that, USDT is Bitfinex, right? And there's a bunch of others out there. USDT is the most popular, of course. Mm-hmm. And that's a centralized place. You can go to Bitfinex and you know who those people are, as we saw with BitMEX. They just got a bit of a hammering themselves. So is that why you think Bitcoin's a little bit, again, I'm trying to phrase this correctly, safer perhaps, because it's not so easy to go, hey, it's you're doing the wrong thing, or we want to stop you. It's not an individual. Is that why, Bill?
Yes, right. It can be a little bit more, maybe the word I should use is mainstream, right? In other words, the Bitcoin maximalists this year, I mean, they were cyberpunks a year or two ago, and now they're going to be speaking at the Square Christmas party. You know what I'm saying? Like, those guys have almost gone corporate, just by news flow, right? So, they're going to have to go to Brooks Brothers for their wardrobe in terms of, stable coins. You had the G20 come out and talk about, central bank digital currencies, right? The government wants to know, like, the government can see everything that happens on the Bitcoin blockchain. So if you onboard to crypto from Bitcoin, well, I mean, you might as well be doing that in Central Park. They can see that. But if you're going to onboard to crypto with stable coins, that might be something the government takes an issue with, right? So not a lot of people may look at Bitcoin. I mean, I can come up, the argument for Bitcoin is 49% of the US electorate, one way or the other, is going to be unhappy and looking for a constructive rebellion. Well, no better choice than a Coinbase account and some Bitcoin, spoken by a crypto guy, right? But when you talk about regulation and you talk about elections and what governments are going to do, I think the risks lie in stable coins and who controls the interest rate on certain currencies, whether they're digital or fiat.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, so there was actually a pretty interesting report or article this week from the DOJ claiming money laundering was used for stable coins with Tether. Actually, yeah. So unsealed DOJ documents say alleged money launderers tried to bribe US officials using Tether. So going back to Bill's earlier comment of Bitcoin could actually be safer than stable coins. And I feel like all these central banks, they basically see that they could be put out of business, right? This entire racket of them just printing money and having control of entire economies could be shackled or hindered by stablecoins, right? So, and I think that's why when Facebook tried to launch Facebook Libra, they received so much backlash, because now they saw that, wow, this is actually coming, not just by some cypherpunks, as Bill mentioned, but one of the biggest companies in the world, Facebook. And now we see Square hopping into it, and now other public companies as well. So I think they see that this movement is coming, and they want to make sure that they're still in control, especially from a regulation and compliance perspective. And they know that if crypto were to go mainstream, it's not through Bitcoin so much, but more so stable coins, right? Because if people realize, hey, we can just have a digital version of the dollar that is a lot easier to use, has less friction, and it's not controlled by a central bank or government, that's very powerful. And I think all these regulators are very concerned about that. And I think that's why there's lots of backlash with that. With that being said, let's go back to our question of the day. So, drum rolls, the audience has voted, pump it. Most people are long Bitcoin. Obviously, not really a shocker. Okay, so tell us what you think down in the comments below.